O'Keefe is a writer, but he's also an ordinary person, just like you and I. He has people he loves in his life, people who sometimes go through struggles, and one of the people going through a struggle in his life is his mom, struggling with Alzheimer's. And Vincent writes about that experience of sharing life with his mom and Alzheimer's, but not just the parts that are struggle. He writes about the parts that are delightful. And he tells about his mom not being able to remember many times that she even has grandkids, much less their ages. But he tries to weave together things from the past that she does remember with things from the present, so that for a moment she can live in the present with him and with the rest of the family. And so one day Vincent called his mom, and he said to her when she answered the phone, "This is Vincent. I have a question for you. Your granddaughter is wanting to take guitar lessons. Do you have any advice for her?" Vincent's mom had taken guitar lessons when she was an adult. She was a smoker, and she substituted guitar for smoking, and that's how she quit smoking. And Vincent's mom started to laugh. And she said, "I have advice. Tell her to do what I did. Find the best-looking guitar teacher she can." And Vincent said, "Mom, she's only 13. What kind of advice is that?" And they laughed. Had a delightful laugh over it, and it was a chance for his mom to share the humor that she always liked to share, to draw out laughter in those around her. I think God also has this eternal desire to make us laugh, to surprise us. Israel asked for a new king. And God comes up with an idea and says, "You know, you see that boy out on the hillside following the sheep around? He also writes poetry. Go get David. He'll work for the king." Israel's not looking for a prophet. So God chooses one. Chooses Isaiah and tells Isaiah, "You know, you're going to go speak my word to the people, and I'm going to make their hearts hard. I'm going to plug their ears so they can't hear the words that you speak. I'm going to close their eyes so they can't see and understand what you are saying about me." Two of Jesus' own followers have a little tiff about who's going to get to sit at the right hand of Jesus and the left hand of Jesus when they make it to heaven. And Jesus remembers that tiff. And suddenly we see him not sitting, but taking a towel and girding himself and kneeling at his disciples' feet and saying, "This is what heaven looks like," kneeling at one another's feet and washing them. And I expect you to do the same. How many of you have seen the State Farm commercial? You know the State Farm commercial, probably. It starts out with this guy explaining how he'll never get married, then how he'll never have children, then how he'll never have a minivan, and he'll never have like a home in the suburbs sort of thing, and pretty soon he has all of that. I can remember back to about that age when his story began. I was never going, well, I was maybe going to get married about the age of 40. I was never going to have kids. I was going to do something in life that didn't require public speaking. And I was married by 21, was in a preaching class by 23, and had my first child, our first child, by the age of 25. And this last Thursday, we went down to visit that first child in Bloomington where she lived. We drove 500 miles round trip just to have supper with him, and her boyfriend. It was like, that was never going to be me 30 years ago. And yet it was wonderful. And I wouldn't give it up for the world. I think God has a sense of humor, and I hope that when we begin to have a sense of humor about ourselves, it means we're starting to understand what God is trying to teach us in this life. Irma Bombeck wrote these words as she was thinking about her own death, impending death. She said, if I had to live life over again, I would have burned the pink candle that looked like a rose instead of letting it melt in storage. How silly to guard those things that we think are so important and not just enjoy them. To guard and protect this life that we've been given instead of just enjoying it. Today, we happen upon a scripture passage that seemed a little odd to me over the years, especially as United Methodists, and United Methodists aren't ones for gambling or historically aren't. And we have this scripture passage where the disciples decide, well, we have 11 followers, Judas is dead, there's 12 tribes of Israel. It'd really be nice if we had a 12th follower again that we could call an apostle. So who do we decide that we will pick? It has to be somebody that's lived with Jesus, that's followed Jesus this whole time. And they narrow it down to 2, and that would mean campaigning time and speech time and people lining up on one candidate's side and lining up on the other candidate's side and maybe putting a little money toward the campaign, coming up with some uplifting slogans, coming up with some fear-creating slogans about the other guy, all these sorts of things. And they could have done that, and what they do instead begins to make a lot of sense to me as the years go by. They decide, well, let's roll the dice. Let's draw straws. Let's flip the coin. Let's get into a wild game of Uno, winner take all. As wacky as it seems, there's something to it. Because what they're really saying is, okay, we decided we needed someone else. We voted on that. We all agree on that. And here are all these good candidates, at least as good as us, and we kind of messed up along the way too. Any of these people that we know that walk with Jesus could do this. Which one's the best? How do we let God decide? Well, I don't know if God gets into nudging dice as they roll. I really doubt it. But they were saying, we trust God can use either of them. And we'll get out of the way. We're going to have a vote after this conference. How much 2,000 years ago, when they rolled the dice, so to speak, and people were willing to get out of the way of however the results turned out, they were really saying, not my will, but God's will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And of course, I'm hoping Grace will vote yes for the Healthy Church Initiative, but I have a deeper prayer. And the deeper prayer goes beyond the Healthy Church Initiative and what we might do for the next 2 years. It goes into our lives and what we will do with all the rest of our years. My deep prayer for all of us who seek to follow Jesus is that we will be able to keep finding new ways of keeping hope alive and laughter alive and joy alive in this world, even as the world changes, even as people's needs change. One of the first signs of a healthy church, I think, is humbly praying for the Spirit to guide us, even when the Spirit is guiding us in a world that is changing to do things that we haven't done before. And if you're willing to follow Jesus as he seeks to guide you, if you're willing to do that humbly enough, saying, not my will, but your will, I invite you to share in a prayer with me. It's a wonderful prayer to use at the beginning of any new venture. And today, but if you're willing to pray with me. I am no longer my own, but thine. Put me to what you will. Bring me with whom you will. Put me to doing, put me to suffering. Let me be employed by you, or laid aside for you, exalted for you, or brought low. Let me be full, let me be empty. Let me have all things, let me have nothing. I freely and willingly yield all things to you, Lord. Now glorious and blessed God, you are mine, I am yours. So be it. Let the covenant I have made on earth be ratified in